It was beautiful, Robert. A hard act to follow. Fear to courage. Our theme for the month is creativity. And our topic for this morning is dare. Fear to courage. So I'm going to be daring you a little later. We are amazingly creative beings. Amazingly creative. We have the power to create what we want in our lives. And we can use our God-given imagination and our God-given creativity to lift us out of fear into courage. And as we do that, as we let go of that fear, we experience more productivity in our lives. We experience deeper connections. And we absolutely get to experience more joy as we move free from fear. The nature of the universe is creative. It is the creative power behind all that is, all of the worlds, all of the universes. And that's what we're part of. That's what lives in, through, and as us. That's the power that we can draw on. The strength that helps us to move from this place of fear to courage. Fear is a belief in limitation. Now, the letters FEAR have been used as acronyms for false evidence appearing real, because that's often what fear is. And also, and I like this one, forget everything and run. Because that's what some of us do when we experience fear. But when we get in touch with our true selves and open ourselves up to our natural creativity, fear can be transformed. Fear can be transformed into something that just flows through us, a creativity that flows through us joyfully and easily. Because we live in an unlimited universe. I loved the song you picked, for We're Without Limits, no chains can bind us. That's true, folks. He didn't just make that up. It's true, yeah. Here's what our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, had to say. We're dealing with a power which in itself is limitless. We limit it, and so it cannot become to us the bigger thing. Of itself, the power is the same that made the worlds, and it cannot realize any sense of limitation. Stop limiting things. Things are as big as we make them. No more, no less. All things are given to us to use. Make use of them. Everything is limitless. Dare, dare, dare. Now, one of the resources for the talks this month is the book Creative Confidence, Unleashing the Creative Potential Within All of Us. And it was written by a pair of brothers, Tom Kelly and David Kelly. And they have worked in the creative realm, and I know that Gregory talked about this some last week. They have worked in the creative realm for years and are amazingly creative. They define creative confidence as the belief that we are all creative. The belief that we are all creative. And isn't that exactly what we teach? That we are the creators of our experience, that we are the creators of what we see around us. We are the creators of the love and health and relationships that come into our lives. We get to do it, folks. Creativity shows up as new ideas or solutions, new ways to approach life. Because, when we shift how we look at things, the things we look at shift. And so we have that option at all times. And everybody is creative. Everybody is. I am creative. Say that with me. I am creative. I wondered if anybody was going to say you are creative. No. Let's say it again the way it's supposed to be said. I am creative. And don't you forget that, folks, because that is so important. And creative confidence is when we know that, and when we remember it, and when we put it to use in our lives. It's absolutely not just coming up with new good ideas, but having the courage to follow through, having the courage to attempt something that maybe we have never attempted before, and to go for it, basically. People who consciously use their creativity and who believe that they can affect change in their lives and in the world set their sights higher. They persevere longer. They thrive in the face of failure. When we know, when we believe, when we remind ourselves a lot that we are those creative beings, it makes a difference in our lives. Bless you. Now, the biggest fear for most of us is the fear of failure. Now, you may or may not know that feeling. You know, what the words that come to you that say, yeah, you think, yeah, that say, oh, you know, I couldn't do this as well as so-and-so, so I may not even try. And in fact, I probably shouldn't try because I'll just fail. Or, what if I try and I don't make it? What if people laugh at me or think that I'm stupid or lazy or crazy? Maybe I won't try. Or just the what if I fail? What if I fail? So let's talk about failure and how important it is and what a difference it can make in our lives. Failure has gotten a bad name in our society. But where would we be without it? I mean, how do we learn our lessons, folks? How can we learn if we don't step out and risk failing? Now, has anyone else ever had a failed relationship, or just me? Okay, all right. And did you learn from that failed relationship? Did you get some lessons? Did you get some things that you could take into your next relationship from that failed relationship, or maybe those failed relationships? Did it make a difference in what happened? Now, I can pretty much say we've all failed at relationships, and yet where would we be if we let that stop us? If we said, I'm never going to love again, I'm never going to trust again. We learned from our failures. There seems to be a myth that creative geniuses don't fail. That's absolutely not true. Now, to go back in history, we can look at Thomas Edison. And he, of course, was prolific in his inventions. And he's the one that did the light bulb, the incandescent light bulb. Now, he knew that a failed experiment doesn't really mean it's a failure if you've learned something from it. He made over 1,000 attempts, learning opportunities, before he created the incandescent light bulb that we would be lost without. I mean, we have other newer things now, but what a big deal that was. And then there were the Wright brothers. Now, they're the ones that are credited with the first flight. Do you think that first flight was really the first flight? You know, there were hundreds of attempts, hundreds of times when they put themselves out there and learned what worked and learned what didn't work and what they needed to patch up and try again with. So, how do we overcome fear of failure? How do we overcome that fear of failure? If we had drums, I'd ask for a drum roll. Thank you. We overcome the fear of failure by failing. We overcome the fear of failure by failing. Now, That may not be the answer you wanted, but that's the truth. That's what we have to work with. We have to give ourselves permission to fail. Now, I think of Reverend Barry Ebert at Mile High Church. He teaches parenting the love and logic way. And when he starts each of these love and logic classes for parents, he says, we want our kids to make lots of mistakes, right? And of course, there are a number of parents who are thinking, what do you mean? We want our kids to be perfect. But then they come to realize that unless kids get a chance to make their choices and make their mistakes, they don't learn. I mean, are there any of us that just learned and got all of our wisdom from what our parents told us, and we didn't need to go out and experiment? Okay, let's see. I'm looking around, you just look like a bunch that has all done some experimenting, that has done some wonderful experimenting to learn what works. And I guess I'm sure in that there are some things that we have considered failures, but they're learning experience. It's what we do. And when we learn that failure is part of our learning, when we remember that, when we can accept and be confident that it's part of the game, then we can move forward even when there are seeming setbacks. Even when there are seeming setbacks. The guys that wrote Creative Confidence, the brothers, they took juggling lessons one time. So they'd never juggled. They wanted to learn how to juggle, so they signed up for these lessons. And so they went in, and of course, they thought at first they were going to be handed one ball. And they were handed 3. And then they thought, okay, we're going to be tossing these up and catching them. That's not what happened. They started out by saying, okay, you've got 3 balls, throw them up in the air, let them land on the floor. Pick them up, do it again. And so they did that over and over and over and over until the most natural thing in the world was for them to throw the balls up and have them land on the floor. Because it was explained to them that you're never going to be a good juggler until you can be comfortable with the balls landing on the floor. Because it's going to happen, folks. It's going to happen. And so by failing and failing and failing and being comfortable with that, they got to then move on to something else. And learn to juggle, and I suspect they both did. Now, we get to just try things and see what works. On Thursday, Dave Goodwin came in because we've been having some problems with our VGA connection. That's the thing that connects the computer to the projector. And so he took it apart, and we tried something, and it didn't work. And so we tried something else, and it didn't work either. Now, at that point, we could have said, okay, we have failed at this. Let's just get a new part or do something. But we didn't. We kept trying stuff. And finally, he figured out what was going to work. But it took a good, more than a handful of tries, I believe it was. So we got to learn what didn't work. And by learning what didn't work, we got to learn what worked. Thank you, Dave, for doing that. So appreciate it. Yeah, sometimes you just never know what might work. But if you're willing to experiment, so what might happen if you were to label your next risky thing that comes into your head to do, your next idea? What might happen if you were to label that as an experiment? You could tell yourself that, and you could tell other people that too. You know, I don't know what's going to happen when I do this, but I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to try organizing my life this way and see if it works. But it's just an experiment, so no big deal if it doesn't work out. So we can do that. Or what if we had a little bit of fun with failing? like set up some opportunities to fail? I mean, we could at a lunch or dinner invite everybody around the table to eat with their non-dominant hand. Now, oh, let's not do it at the potluck at our house. Thanks for that idea, Linda. Wow. But you know, we'd probably have to change the tablecloth. We might kind of make a mess. But it's in a way of experimenting. What happens when I do things differently, when I do things that are not comfortable? You know, I don't have to be successful all the time. And I think we could probably have some fun about that, but not at our house. Yeah. So we can find some fun ways to practice failing. Because let's face it, most of us learned our fear of failure when we were little ones. Maybe it was a parent or a teacher that criticized us, that said that what we were doing wasn't good enough. Maybe it was friends or somebody that made fun of us because we stepped out and tried something different that we thought was really going to be cool, but it didn't work. But most of us learned it when we were young. Author and researcher Brené Brown, who has interviewed hundreds of people in her research on shame, found that a third of the people can remember a specific what she called the creativity scar, a specific time in their life when they were young, when they were told either that they you could never be a writer, you could never be a singer, you're not an artist. A specific time. And I'm sure that many of us can remember specific things that we were told that kept us from using our creativity. I loved running across this story. Education expert Sir Ken Robinson was told an interesting story by Paul McCartney of the Beatles. Now, apparently, Paul McCartney didn't do very well in music studies in school. I mean, in high school, he had a teacher that didn't give him good grades, never recognized that he had any talent, and never encouraged him in any way. Now, George Harrison happened to have the same teacher. He also was never encouraged, didn't get good grades, and the teacher never recognized either of them. So, let's see. Sir Kim said, "Let me get this straight. This teacher had half of the Beatles in his classes and didn't notice anything out of the ordinary? I mean, where would we be if Paul McCartney and George Harrison had followed the lead of that music teacher and had stayed in Liverpool and worked in their industries there? The world would not be the same. The world would not be the same. So it's time for us, each of us, to move courageously past any old messages. Because just like that teacher who didn't recognize their talent, it could be that whoever gave us those messages, they were just talking from their own stuff. They weren't really talking about us at all, because we are unlimited creative beings. Now, since today is Mother's Day, I'm reminded just of how much those of us who are mothers or fathers expected to be perfect parents before we were parents. I mean, our kids wouldn't have any of those pesky problems that other people's children have. Because, we're going to do it right. We're really going to be good parents, and we'll have perfect kids. Sound familiar at all to anyone? Yeah. I know that was certainly the case with me and my ex-husband before we adopted kids. It's like, geez, this is a snap. I can do this so much better than anybody else. Wrong. So the guys that wrote the Creative Confidence book shared some parenting suggestions, parenting recommendations based on how they were raised. And they're good suggestions. Give children a lot of space to explore and create and experiment. Now, one of them took the family piano apart. Now, he'd taken apart and put back together many things, but he wasn't able to put it back together. But later, many of the piano parts were used in art projects. The other one got a brand new red bicycle, and the next day sandblasted all the red off and painted it neon green. He didn't get in trouble because their parents, valued the creativity. They valued the learning that comes from experimenting much more than they valued. I see some people shaking their heads. Much more than they valued material stuff. Okay, we can also give children a nurturing environment. Give them freedom to figure things out for themselves. Give them the freedom to explore and experiment. Those sound like pretty good ideas? What if we gave ourselves the same permissions? And what if we were as gentle with ourselves as we might be with our kids or probably our grandkids when they did little experiments that surprised us? We are always learning. What if we expected to make mistakes? What if we expected to make mistakes on our road to learning and evolving and growing? And what if we could be as gentle with ourselves as we are learning and growing as we would be with the person that is the most beloved to us in the world? Think about that for a moment. It takes courage to be gentle with ourselves and make mistakes as we're growing. We can develop that courage by remembering that, when we were babies learning to roll over, we just kept trying it until we did it. Every one of us. Or else we wouldn't be here. And then when we were toddlers, we took steps. And we fell down and we got up and we toppled over and we got up and we kept at it until we learned the skill of walking. But it took a lot of failures. Learning courage is like that, a step at a time, sometimes a failure at a time. And of course, we have spiritual tools that we can use. We can use prayer, claiming that courage is ours. Claiming that we're not held back by fear, that no chains can bind us. We can sing that prayer. We can also, of course, get others to pray for us and use affirmations. And just knowing that we are all part of the one, all sourced by the divine life, can give us courage. And we can also surround ourselves by people who do not shame us if we make a mistake, and we can be those people. We can be those people who look at others' mistakes, what we call mistakes, as learning experiences. So I dare you to move from fear to courage. I absolutely dare you to go out this week and fail. Every one of you, fail at something. Okay, now here's the next dare. And I dare you to be gentle with yourself as you do that. To be gentle, knowing that it's just a learning experience. And I dare you to see other people's failures as learning experiences without blaming and shaming them. Because that is such a powerful way to support people in their creativity. I dare you to give yourself permission to fail. In fact, I double dare you. Anyone up for that? Yes. Okay, let's take it into prayer. I am so grateful. So grateful that those things that have been in our lives that we have called mistakes are simply learning experiences. So grateful that we get to move forward, that we get to experience our life in richer and richer and richer ways because of what we are courageous enough to step into. And so what I claim for every person here is a level of courage that allows us to use our creativity, our God-given creativity, allows us to use it to move forward, to learn, to grow, to evolve, to bless others, and to bring all the good that we desire into our lives. And so I know that because I can know these things in my heart, because I can speak these words with faith, I know that they'll go right into the mind of God, the mind that cannot help but produce what we put into it. And so I claim courage. I claim a willingness to fail and be gentle with ourselves. Gentle, gentle, gentle. I claim a path that is filled with all that we need to support us in our growth and in our joy and in our happiness. And I am grateful, grateful, grateful. So I just let it be, and so it is.